So it's a new book, not a new series. We're still doing Lockwood, but this book is The Hollow Boy, written by Jonathan Stride, and the third in the series, if you've been following along with The Screaming Staircase, which was book one, and The Whispering Skull, which was book two. Yeah, we'll be doing what we've been doing with the rest of them and reading sort of two-thirds-ish. Well, we'll see. It's split into 6 parts, so we'll do 4 to 5 parts. We'll see how it goes as a staple for Mystery Monday, just because it seems to be doing well. Seem to be enjoying. So, without further ado, then we'll begin with part 1, which is Lavender Lodge, and it's chapter 1. I think it was only at the very end of the Lavender Lodge job, when we were fighting for our lives in that unholy guest house, that I glimpsed Lockwood Co working together perfectly for the first time. It was just the briefest flash, but every detail remains etched into my memory. Those moments of sweet precision when we actually acted like a team. Yes, every detail. Anthony Lockwood, coat aflame, arms flapping madly as he staggered back toward the open window. George Cubbins dangling from the ladder, one-handed like an oversized wind-blown pear. And me, Lucy Carlyle, bruised, bloody, and covered in cobwebs, sprinting, jumping, rolling desperately to avoid the ghostly coils. Sure, I know none of that sounds so great, and to be fair, we could have done without George's squeaking. But it was the thing about Lockwood and Co. We were we made the most of unpromising situations and turned them to our advantage. You want to know how? I'll show you. 6 hours earlier, there we were, on the doorstep, ringing the bell. It was a dreary, storm-soaked November afternoon, with the shadows deepening and the rooftops of old Whitechapel showing sharp and black against the clouds. Rain spotted our coats and glistened on the blades of our rapiers. The clocks had just struck 4. "Everyone ready?" Lockwood asked. "Remember, we ask them some questions. We keep a careful psychic watch. If we get any clues to the murder room or the location of the bodies, we don't let on. We just say goodbye politely and head off to fetch the police." "That's fine," I said. George, busily adjusting the work belt, nodded. "It's a useless plan," the hoarse whisper came from somewhere behind my ear. "I say, stab them first. Ask questions later. That's your only sensible option." I nudged my rucksack with an elbow. "Shut up." "I thought you wanted my advice." "Your job is to keep lookout, not distract us with stupid theories. Now hush." We waited on the steps. The Lavender Lodge boarding house was a narrow terraced building of 3 floors. Like most of this part of London's East End, it had a weary, ground-down air. Soot-crusted the pebble-dash render, thin curtains dangled from the windows. No light showed in the upper stories, but the hall light was on, and there was a yellowed "Vacancies" sign propped up behind the panel of cracked glass in the centre of the floor, or door. Lockwood squinted through the glass, shielding his eyes with his gloved hand. "Well, somebody's at home," he said. "I can see 2 figures standing at the far end of the hall." He pressed the buzzer again. It was an ugly sound, a razor to the ear. He rapped the knocker too. No one came. "Hope they put their skates on," George said. "I don't want to worry you or anything, but there's something white creeping up the street toward us." He was right. Far off in the dusk, a pale form could just be seen. It drifted slowly above the pavement in the shadows of the houses, coming in our direction. Lockwood shrugged. He didn't even bother looking. "Ah, it's probably just a shirt flapping on someone's line. It's still early. There won't be anything nasty yet." George and I glanced at one another. It was that time of the year when the days were scarcely lighter than the nights, and the dead began walking during the darkest afternoons. On the way over from the tube, in fact, we'd seen a shade on Whitechapel High Road, a faint twist of darkness, standing brokenly in the corner, the gutter, being spun and buffeted by the tail winds of the last cars hurrying home. So nasty things were out already, as Lockwood well knew. Since when has a flapping shirt had a head and a spindly leg attached? George asked. He took off his glasses, rubbed them dry, and returned them to his nose. Lucy, you tell him. He never listens to me. Yes, come on, Lockwood, I said. We can't just stand here all night. If we're not careful, we'll get picked off by that ghost. Lockwood smiled. We won't. Our friends in the hall have to answer us. Not do so would be an admission of guilt. Any second now they'll come to the door and we'll be invited inside. Trust me, there's no need to worry. And the point about Lockwood was that you believed him, even when he said far-fetched stuff like that. Right then, he was waiting quite casually on the step, one hand raised on his sword hilt, as crisply dressed as ever in his long coat and slim dark suit, his dark hair flopped over his brow. The light from the hallway shone on his lean, pale face and sparkled in his eyes as he grinned across at me. He was a picture of poise and unconcern. That's how I wanted to remember him, the way he was that night, with horrors up ahead and horrors at her back, and Lockwood standing in between them, calm and unafraid. George and I weren't quite so stylish in comparison, but we looked the business even so. Dark clothes, dark boots. George had even tucked his shirt in. All three of us carried rucksacks and heavy leather duffel bags, old, worn, and spotted with ectoplasm burns. An onlooker, recognizing us as a psychic investigation agent, would have assumed that the bags were filled with equipment of our trade: salt bombs, lavender, iron filings, silver seals and chains. But this was, in fact, quite true. Uh, but I also carried the skull in the jar, so we weren't entirely predictable. We waited. The wind blew in dirty gusts between the houses. Iron spirit wards hung on ropes high above us, clicked and clattered like witches' teeth. The white shape flitted stealthily toward us down the street. I zipped up my parka and edged closer to the wall. Yep, it's a phantasm approaching, the voice from the rucksack said, in whispers only that I could hear. It's seen you, and it's hungry. Personally, I reckon it's got its eye on George. Lockwood, I began, we really have to move. But Lockwood was already stepping back from the door. No need, he said. What did I tell you? Here they are. Shadows rose behind the glass. Chains rattled. The door swung wide. A man and a woman stood there. They were probably murderers, but we didn't want to startle them. We put on our best smiles. The Lavender Lodge guest house had come to our attention 2 weeks earlier. The local police in Whitechapel had been investigating the cases of several people, some salesmen, but mostly labourers working during the day nearby in London docks, who'd gone missing in the area. It had been noticed that some of these men had been staying at an obscure boarding house, Lavender Lodge on Cannon Lane, Whitechapel, shortly before they'd disappeared. The police had visited, they'd spoken to the proprietors, a Mr. and Mrs. Evans, and even searched the premises. They found nothing. But they were adults, of course. They couldn't see into the past. They couldn't detect the psychic residue of crimes that might have been committed there. For that, they needed an agency to help out. It so happened that Lockwood Co. had been doing a lot of work at the East End. Our success with the so-called shrieking ghosts of Spitalfields having made us popular in the district, We agreed to pay Mr. and Mrs. Evans a little call, and here we were. Given the suspicions about them, I'd half expected the owners of Lavender Lodge to look pretty sinister, but that wasn't the case at all. If they resembled anything, it was a pair of elderly old owls roosting on a branch. They were short, roundish, and had grey hair, with soft, blank, sleepy faces, blinking at us behind large spectacles. Their clothes were heavy and somehow old-fashioned. They pressed close to each other, filling in the doorway. Beyond them, I could see the tasselled ceiling light and dingy wallpaper. The rest was hidden. Mr. and Mrs. Evans? Lockwood gave a slight bow. Hello, Anthony Lockwood of Lockwood Co. I rang you earlier. These are my associates, Lucy Carlyle and George Cubbins. They gazed at us for a moment as if conscious that the fate of 5 people had reached the tipping point. No one spoke. What is it regarding, please? I don't know how old the man was. Uh, when I see someone older than 30, time's sort of concertinas for me, but he was definitely closer to the coffin than Crib. He had wisps of hair oiled back across his scalp and nets of wrinkles stapled under his eyes. He blinked at us, all absent-minded and benign. As I said on the phone, we wanted to talk with you about one of your past residents, a Mr. Benton, Lockwood said. Uh, Part of an official missing persons inquiry. Perhaps we could come in? It'll be dark soon, the woman said. Oh, it won't take long. Lockwood used his best smile. I contributed a reassuring grin. George was too busy staring at the white shape drifting up the street to do anything other than look nervous. Mr. Evans nodded. He stepped slowly back and to the side. Yes, of course, but best do it quickly, he said. It's late. Not long before they'll be coming out. He was far too old to see the phantasm now crossing the road toward us. We didn't like to mention it either. We just smiled and nodded and, as swiftly as we decently could without pushing, followed Mrs. Evans into the house. Mr. Evans let us go past, and then shut the door softly, blocking out the night and the ghost and the rain. They took us down a long hallway into a public lounge where a fire flickered in a tiled grate. The decor was the usual: cream wood-chip wallpaper, worn brown carpet, ranks of decorative plates, and prints of ugly golden frames. A few armchairs were scattered about, angular and comfortless, and there was a radio, a drinks cabinet, and a small TV. A big wooden dresser on the back wall carried cups, glasses, sauce bottles, and other breakfast things, and 2 sets of folding chairs and plastic top tables confirmed that this single room was where the guests ate as well as socialized. Right now, we were the only ones there. We put our bags down. George whipped the rain off his glasses again, or wiped the rain off his glasses again. Lockwood ran a hand through his damp hair. Mr. and Mrs. Evans stood facing us in the centre of the room. Close up, their owl-like qualities had intensified. They were stoop-necked, round-shouldered. He had a shapeless cardigan, she in a dark woolen dress. They remained standing close together, elderly, but not, I thought, under all their heavy clothes, particularly frail. They did not offer us seats. Clearly they hoped for a short conversation. Benson, you said his name was? Mr. Evans asked. Benton. You stayed here recently, I said. 3 weeks ago. You confirmed that on the phone. He's one of the missing people who... Yes, yes, we talked to the police about him, but I can show you the guest book if you like. Humming gently, the old man went to the dresser. His wife remained motionless, watching us. He returned with the book, opened it, and handed it to Lockwood. You can see his name there. Thank you. While Lockwood made a show of studying the pages, he did the real work. I listened to the house. It was quiet. Psychically speaking, I detected nothing. Okay, there was a muffled voice coming from my rucksack on the floor, but that didn't count. Now's your chance, it whispered. Kill them both, and it's job done. I gave the pack a subtle kick uh, with the heel of my boot, and the voice fell silent. Can you remember much about Mr. Benton? In the firelight, George's doughy face and sandy hair gleamed palely, the swell of his stomach pressed tight against his sweater. He hitched up his belt, subtly checking the gauge on his thermometer. Or any of your missing residents, for that matter? Chat with them much at all? Not really, the old man said. What about you, Nora? Mrs. Evans had nicotine yellow hair, thin up top and fixed in position like a helmet. Like her husband's, her skin was wrinkled, though her lines radiated from the corners of her mouth, as if you might draw her lips tight, uh, like you could with a string bag. No, she said, but that's not surprising. Few of our guests stay long. We cater to the trade, Mr. Evans said. Salesmen, always moving on. There was a silence. The room was heavy with the scent of lavender, which keeps unwanted visitors away. Fresh bundles sat in silver tankards on the mantelpiece and windows. There were other defences too, ornamental house guards made of twisted iron and shaped like flowers, animals, and birds. It was a safe room, most ostentatiously so. Anyone staying here now? I asked. Not at present. How many bedrooms do you have? 6. 4 on the first floor, 2 at the top. And which of them do you sleep in? Oh, what a lot of questions, Mr. Evans said. From such a very young lady. I am of a generation that remembers when children were children, not psychic investigation agents with swords and an over-inquisitive manner. We sleep on the ground floor, in a room behind the kitchen. Now, I think we've told the police all this. I'm not entirely sure why you're here. We'll be going soon, Lockwood said. If we could just have a look at the room Mr. Benton stayed in, we'll be on our way. How still they were suddenly, like gravestones rising in the centre of the lounge. Over by the dresser, George ran his finger down the side of a ketchup bottle, which had a thin layer of dust on it. I'm afraid that's impossible, Mr. Evans said. The room is made up for new guests. We don't want it disturbed. All trace of Mr. Benton and the other residents will be long gone now. I must ask you to leave. He moved towards Lockwood. Despite his carpet slippers and the cardigan and the rounded shoulders, there was decisiveness in the action, impression of suddenly flexing strength. Lockwood had many pockets in his coat. Some contained weapons and lock-picking wires. One, to my certain knowledge, had an emergency store of tea bags. From another, he took a plastic card. This is a warrant, he said. It empowers Lockwood Co. as DPRAC appointed investigation agents to search any premises that might be implicated in serious crimes or haunting. If you wish to check, ring Scotland Yard. Inspector Montague Barnes would be happy to talk to you. Crime? The old man shrank back, biting his lip. Haunting? Lockwood's smile was wolf-like. As I say, we just wished to take a look upstairs. There's nothing supernatural here, Mrs. Evans said, scowling. Look around. See the defences. Her husband patted her arm. It's all right, Nora. They're agents. It's our duty to help them. Mr. Benton, if I recall, stayed in room 2, on the top floor, right up the stairs. 2 flights and you're there. You won't miss it. Thanks. Lockwood picked up his duffel bag. Why not leave your things? Mr. Evans suggested. The stairs are narrow, and it's a long way up. We just looked at him. George and I shrugged our bags onto our backs. Well, take your time up there, Mr. Evans said. There was no light on upstairs. From the semi-darkness of the stairwell, From the semi-darkness of the stairwell, filing after the others, I looked back through the door at the couple. Mr. and Mrs. Evans stood in the middle of the lounge, pressed side by side, ruby red and flickering in the firelight. They were watching us as we climbed, their heads tilted at identical angles, their spectacles four circles of reflected flame. "What do you think?" George whispered from above. Lockwood had paused and was inspecting a heavy fire door halfway up the flight. It was bolted open, flush against the door or the wall. "I don't know how, but they're guilty. Guilty as sin." George nodded. "Did you see the ketchup? No one's had breakfast here in a long time." "They must know it's all over for them," I said as we went on. "If something bad happened to their guests up here, we're going to sense it. They know what talents we have. What do they expect us to do when they find out?" Lockwood's reply was interrupted by a stealthy tread on the stair behind. Looking back, we caught a glimpse of Mr. Evans' gleaming face and his hair, disarranged, eyes wild and staring. He reached for the fire door, began swinging it shut. In a flash, Lockwood's rapier was in his hand. He sprang back down, coat flying. The fire door slammed, slicing off the light from downstairs. The rapier cracked against the wood. As we stood in the dark, we heard bolts being forced into place. Then we heard our captor laughing through the door. "Mr. Evans," Lockwood said, "open this now." The old man's voice was muffled but distinct. "You should have left when you had the chance. Look around all you like. Make yourselves at home. The ghost will have found you by midnight. I'll be sweeping up what's left in the morning." After that, it was just the clump, clump, clump of carpet slippers fading away. "Brilliant," said the voice from my rucksack. "Outwitted by an old age pensioner. Outstanding. What a team." I didn't tell it to shut up this time. It kind of had a point. And that's the end of chapter 1. Thank you for listening.